January 1st, 2023. In the coastal town of Cohasset, Massachusetts, the new year began like any other ordinary day for Ana Walshe and her family. But just a few days later, the 39-year-old mother of three was reported missing after her family, friends, and co-workers were unable to reach her. According to her husband, Ana had left home early that morning to travel to Washington, D.C. for what he described as a work-related emergency. At first, the case was treated as a concerning missing person investigation. But as detectives began reviewing travel records, surveillance footage, and the events that unfolded during the first days of the new year, they discovered a number of details that did not match the story they had been told. The search for a missing woman gradually evolved into a homicide investigation, drawing attention from across the United States. So, what really happened to Ana Walshe during the first hours of 2023? At the beginning of 2023, Ana Walshe lived with her family in the coastal town of Cohasset, Massachusetts, a residential community located about 25 miles south of downtown Boston. The area is known for its quiet neighborhoods, local schools, and family-oriented lifestyle. Ana Walshe, 39, worked as a professional in the luxury real estate industry. At the time, she was employed by a real estate firm based in Washington, D.C. Because of her job, Ana frequently traveled between the Washington area and Massachusetts. Many colleagues described her as dedicated, career-driven, and accustomed to a demanding schedule. Outside of work, Ana was also the mother of three young sons. Much of her time away from work was devoted to her family and caring for her children. According to testimony presented later in court, Ana often worked hard to balance the responsibilities of her career with her role as a mother. Her husband, Brian Walshe, was 50 years old. In early 2023, Brian primarily remained in Massachusetts with the children, while Ana frequently traveled for work in Washington, D.C. The family lived in a rental home in Cohasset, and from the outside appeared to be living the life of a stable, middle-class family. To neighbors and those who knew her, Ana was remembered as an energetic, friendly woman who was devoted to her children. There were no public signs that her name would soon appear in headlines across the country and become the focus of one of Massachusetts' most closely followed criminal cases in the years that followed. Ana and Brian Walshe had been married for several years and were raising their three sons together. For much of that time, they maintained what appeared to be a relatively stable life in Massachusetts, while both pursued their own professional and family goals. However, according to information presented later in court, their marriage was believed to have been under significant strain in the years leading up to Ana's disappearance. Ana's job required her to spend a considerable amount of time in Washington, D.C., which often meant that the couple lived apart for extended periods. Witnesses later testified that the demands of frequent travel and family responsibilities created ongoing stress within the household. At the same time, Brian Walshe was dealing with legal issues related to a federal fraud case. According to court records, he was awaiting sentencing in that case at the beginning of 2023. Prosecutors later argued that personal and financial pressures contributed to growing tensions within the marriage. During the 2025 trial, jurors also heard testimony from a man in Washington, D.C., who stated that he had been involved in a romantic relationship with Ana before her disappearance. Prosecutors argued that this information reflected existing problems within the marriage. The defense, however, maintained that Ana and Brian were still committed to their relationship and continued to make plans for the future. By the end of 2022, their marriage was described as being under considerable pressure and facing uncertainty, even though what was happening behind closed doors remained unknown to the public. On the evening of December 31st, 2022, Ana Walshe celebrated New Year's Eve with her family at their home in Cohasset, Massachusetts. According to testimony presented at trial, a family friend attended the gathering and later stated that she noticed nothing unusual throughout the evening. It was also the last time Ana was seen by an independent witness. According to investigators, after the gathering ended, Ana returned to her normal routine at home with her family. There was no indication that she planned to change her schedule or take an unexpected trip beyond her usual work commitments. During the early hours of January 1st, 2023, Ana was believed to still be at the Cohasset residence. After that point, there were no confirmed sightings from public surveillance cameras, independent witnesses, or travel records showing her outside the home. Evidence collected later showed no indication that Ana arrived at Logan International Airport or boarded a flight to Washington, D.C., as had been described. From that moment forward, Ana Walshe was never seen or heard from again by her family, friends, or co-workers. On January 4, 2023, Ana Walshe's employer in Washington, D.C., contacted authorities after being unable to reach her for several days. According to her colleagues, it was highly unusual for Ana to suddenly stop communicating without any notice. They said such behavior was inconsistent with her normal work habits and routine. After receiving the report, the Cohasset Police Department opened a missing person investigation and began reviewing Ana's recent activities and movements. During the early stages, the case was treated as a concerning disappearance, as investigators had not yet found clear evidence that a crime had occurred. During the search of the Walshe family home in Cohasset, investigators discovered several pieces of evidence that drew their attention to the basement area. According to testimony presented at trial, forensic specialists identified human blood at the scene, along with indications that portions of the area had been cleaned. Beyond the residence, investigators also recovered multiple items of evidence from trash collection locations throughout the region. DNA testing later linked various blood samples, hair, and biological material to Ana Walshe. However, because Ana's body was never recovered, forensic experts were unable to conduct an autopsy, and an exact cause of death was never established in court. As a result, the case became one of the relatively rare homicide investigations in which prosecutors proceeded without the recovery of the victim's body. After receiving the report that Ana Walshe was missing, investigators from the Cohasset Police Department, working alongside the Massachusetts State Police, began reconstructing a timeline of her final days. One of their first priorities was verifying the claim that Ana had left home on the morning of January 1, 2023, to travel to Washington, D.C. for work. Investigators reviewed flight records, travel data, and multiple other sources to trace that journey. However, they found no evidence that Ana had boarded a flight or appeared at Logan International Airport that day. At the same time, investigators began examining phone records, financial activity, and surveillance footage from across the Boston area. During that process, security cameras at several stores captured images of Brian Walshe purchasing various items during the first days of January 2023. According to evidence presented at trial, those purchases included a hacksaw, a utility knife, a hammer, protective equipment, cleaning wipes, and cleaning supplies. The timing of those transactions attracted investigators' attention because they occurred shortly after Ana was last seen. Investigators also analyzed location data and electronic activity associated with Brian. The results indicated multiple trips throughout the greater Boston area in the days following Ana's disappearance. Surveillance footage from several locations captured him near public trash disposal sites, leading investigators to conduct additional searches. Meanwhile, digital forensic specialists reviewed internet search history from electronic devices linked to Brian. According to prosecutors, some searches involved topics related to disposing of a body, the decomposition of human remains, and matters involving inheritance. Those searches were later incorporated into the investigative file and evaluated alongside other evidence. As surveillance footage, electronic records, travel data, and witness statements began to align, the direction of the investigation became increasingly clear. On January 8, 2023, Brian Walshe was arrested and charged with misleading investigators and providing false information to law enforcement during the missing person investigation. It was the first major step taken by prosecutors as the investigation continued to expand. During interviews with police, Brian maintained that Ana had left home on January 1st to travel to Washington, D.C. because of a work-related emergency. However, as investigators compared that account with objective evidence collected from multiple sources, they identified several details that did not align with the timeline they had established. As the investigation progressed and additional evidence was gathered, the allegations against Brian Walshe continued to grow. What had begun as a missing person investigation was gradually evolving into a homicide case. As the investigation continued to expand, prosecutors began building their case using multiple independent sources of evidence. Among the most significant were the DNA test results from items recovered during the search. According to testimony presented at trial, forensic experts identified multiple blood samples, hair, and biological material linked to Ana Walshe on evidence collected during the investigation. Those items included various tools and objects recovered from trash collection locations throughout the greater Boston area. In addition to the biological evidence, the prosecution's case also included surveillance footage, internet search history, purchase records, electronic data, and witness testimony. Prosecutors argued that, when viewed together, the evidence established that Ana Walshe had been killed. Based on that evidence, Brian Walshe was charged with first-degree murder. As the investigation continued to expand, prosecutors began building their case using multiple independent sources of evidence. Among the most significant were the DNA test results from items recovered during the search. According to testimony presented at trial, forensic experts identified multiple blood samples, hair, and biological material linked to Ana Walshe on evidence collected during the investigation. Those items included various tools and objects recovered from trash collection locations throughout the greater Boston area. In addition to the biological evidence, the prosecution's case also included surveillance footage, internet search history, purchase records, electronic data, and witness testimony. Prosecutors argued that, when viewed together, the evidence established that Ana Walshe had been killed. Based on that evidence, Brian Walshe was charged with first-degree murder. Brian Walshe's trial took place at Norfolk Superior Court in Dedham, Massachusetts, in late 2025. The case attracted significant public attention, largely because Ana Walshe's body had never been found. During the trial, prosecutors argued that Brian Walshe had planned to kill his wife and then took steps to conceal the crime. Before the jury, they presented a series of evidence, including electronic records, internet search history, surveillance footage, purchase records, and forensic test results. According to the prosecution, when viewed together, those pieces of evidence formed a relatively clear timeline of what happened to Ana Walshe. Meanwhile, the defense argued that prosecutors could not prove exactly how Ana died because her body had never been recovered. Brian's attorneys maintained that there were no eyewitnesses to the alleged crime, and no evidence establishing a specific cause of death. They argued that their client did not kill his wife, and urged the jury to consider the unanswered questions that remained in the case. After nearly 2 weeks of testimony from investigators, forensic experts, witnesses, and other individuals connected to the case, the jury began deliberations. Jurors reviewed the full body of evidence and the arguments presented by both sides before reaching their final decision regarding Brian Walshe's legal fate. On December 15, 2025, after approximately 6 hours of deliberations spread over 2 days, the jury at Norfolk Superior Court found Brian Walshe guilty of first-degree murder in the death of Ana Walshe. According to reporters inside the courtroom, Brian showed little visible emotion as the verdict was read. 3 days later, Judge Diane Frenier imposed the mandatory sentence required under Massachusetts law, life in prison without the possibility of parole. In addition to the murder conviction, Brian also received additional penalties related to providing false information to police and the unlawful handling of human remains. During the sentencing hearing, the judge stated that the defendant's actions had caused lasting harm to the victim's family, particularly to Ana's 3 sons. Outside the courtroom, Ana's sister said the family believed that justice had finally been served. The case did not end with a life sentence alone. It also left behind lasting consequences for Ana Walshe's family. At the time of her disappearance, Ana's 3 sons were just 2, 4, and 6 years old. They would grow up without their mother during some of the most important years of their childhood. During the sentencing hearing, Ana's sister, Alexandra Dmitrievich, spoke on behalf of the family about the impact the case had caused for those left behind. She said that Ana's loss had created a void that could never be filled. She also emphasized that Ana's children would face many of life's most important milestones without their mother by their side. Ana's family has also had to face another painful reality. To this day, her body has never been found. That means her loved ones have never had the opportunity to say a final goodbye or to visit a resting place where they could honor her memory. The Ana Walshe case illustrates that many family tragedies do not emerge suddenly. In many situations, financial pressures, career demands, personal struggles, and relationship problems can quietly build over long periods of time before leading to irreversible consequences. The case also highlights the growing importance of forensic science and digital evidence in modern criminal investigations. Even though Anna's body was never recovered, investigators were still able to reconstruct a timeline of events through electronic data, surveillance footage, purchase records, and biological evidence collected during the investigation. But beyond the evidence and the legal proceedings, what remains is a loss that cannot be measured by any verdict or sentence. 3 children grew up without their mother. A family lost a daughter, a sister, and a loved one. And to this day, Anna's relatives still do not have a final resting place where they can visit and remember her. Perhaps that is the clearest reminder that in any criminal case, behind the investigative files and courtroom proceedings, there are real people, real lives, and losses that continue long after a verdict has been delivered.